Don't lose when the real estate market plummets. In this educational episode, I'm going to address how to not lose money when your real estate goes down in value, whether it's your rental income real estate, commercial properties, or even your personal residence. Get ready. I'm going to show you how to maintain liquidity, safety, and earn rates of return that are double, triple, even 5 times greater than the net cost of the mortgage on your real estate. So I'm Doug Andrew. I've been a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist now for nearly 5 decades, helping people optimize assets, minimize taxes, and empower what I call their authentic wealth. And many times in the various books that I've been honored to have written, I've authored 12 thus far that have all been bestsellers. And at the end of this episode, if you stay with me, I'm going to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling book, The Laser Fund. It's been flying off of our warehouse shelves, and it is the actual instrument where I keep my serious cash for liquidity, safety, earning a rate of return that many times has been triple to 5 times the net cost of mortgages on my real estate investments. So let me come back full circle and help you understand how this all connects together. It started really back in 1982 when I actually lost a home in foreclosure. And I knew clear back in the 1970s how money works. I've never paid a down payment for any piece of real estate I've acquired. And so my wife and I, we built our 3rd home in 1978. It was our dream home at the time. It was a 6,400 square foot home built on 2 acres on a canyon rim in central Utah. And it had cathedral beam wood deck ceilings. And we would go out on the master bedroom deck and watch the deer and elk bed down in the scrub oak below every night. It was just incredible. And we built that home not using 1 dime of our money. I've never paid a down payment for any piece of property that I've acquired. I've satisfied down payments, but not with my money. So I've always usually financed at least 80% loan to value on a first mortgage, but a second mortgage, I finance up to 100% loan to value using OPM, okay? And so the story was in my very first book of how we acquired this property. And we built on the property, and actually the person who sold us the lot subordinated, and that satisfied the down payment, so we weren't out any money. But we built this home for $150,000, 6,400 square foot home. It was going to be featured in Better Homes and Garden magazine. It was just awesome. And we thought we had the world by the tail, because we were only into this home $150,000, and the week we moved in, it appraised for $305,000, double what we built it for. So we thought we had the world by the tail. Now, I didn't pay 1 dime into that. That's not where the $300,000 of equity came from. It was just worth double what we paid to have it built because we got a super deal with our contractor. So I thought I was in great shape. Well, in 1980 in America, we had a recession, and there was an energy crisis. 16,000 homeowners in Houston, Texas, lost their homes in foreclosure that year. Now, they didn't all of a sudden become bad people. They just couldn't make their mortgage payments. And it didn't matter if they'd been sending extra principal payments against their mortgages. When they lost their job, they got laid off or whatever. It didn't matter if they called up the mortgage company and said, hey, I've been paying you an extra $100 a month now for the last 5 years. I calculate I'm 9 months ahead. I'm just going to coast for 9 months. No, it doesn't matter how much extra you pay. I knew a guy that paid $100,000 windfall that he got against his mortgage. And then he lost his job, and the next mortgage payment was due the next day. He lost his home in foreclosure 90 days later, even though he had just paid $100,000 against his mortgage, because it doesn't matter. That's the deal. And by the way, if you haven't figured this out, mortgage lenders will foreclose on you faster if you have a lot of equity in your home versus if you don't. If you don't have a lot of equity, if you owe 80 or 90% of what they'll work with you. But they're going to foreclose on you just like that if you have a bunch of equity, if you've been paying extra principal payments. A lot of people don't realize this kind of stuff. Well, so what happened in 1980 is I had three things happen to me that my wife and I never dreamed would happen to us simultaneously. And we had a person that was dishonest in our company and had embezzled money. And while they were investigating him, they froze all of the lower level people's income because we were on commission. And 3 of us, we lost our homes in foreclosure. Now, I had a duplex that I sold, and I was able to bring my delinquent mortgage current because I had no income for 9 months. And but then I got behind again, and I had a timeshare at a ski resort that I liquidated, and I was able to bring the mortgage current again. But not having any other liquid assets, I put my house up for sale, and I thought I can build another one. The other 2 individuals in my company, they had already lost their homes in foreclosure. Well, I put the house on the market for $295,000. I had a bona fide appraisal for $305,000. No takers. When there's more supply than there is demand, real estate values drop. So I lowered the price down to $285, $275, $265, $225. Now, even $195. I'll never forget the day that my wife and I walked into the county courthouse. There on the steps at the sheriff's auction, and we watched our beautiful home get foreclosed on. Now, we went out and bought another home within a week with no money down and no credit. Again, I've never had to rely on money or credit to buy any piece of real estate. That's not the point. I learned a lesson that real estate equity, even though I did not put money in there, the house went up in value. That equity meant absolutely nothing but a number on a sheet of paper unless I could access it. And so real estate equity was not liquid when I really needed it. It was not safe. My house went down in value by half. I couldn't even sell it for half of what it was worth. So you don't have safety of principal. And it was not earning a rate of return because the house will go up or down in value regardless of how much equity is in. The rate of return on real estate equity is always the same, 0. The house appreciates or the mortgage goes down, not as a function of a rate of return on equity. The rate of return on equity is always the same. It's 0. You only give it the ability to earn a rate of return when you separate it. Does that make sense? And then I learned to keep my real estate equity separated. So this is why I learned the lesson. And so fast forward through other recessions, I never lost a dime when my house went down in value. Let's go to 2008. Because of this, I had disclosed this story and this strategy in my book, Misfortune, and then my other book, Misfortune 101, which became bestsellers. And then my third book, Last Chance Millionaire, became a New York Times Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller. I talked about it. Well, that came out in 2007. Well, 2008, what happened? Yeah, we had the financial crisis, the mortgage meltdown, and so many people, okay, they had been sending extra principal payments against the mortgage. And here, Mr. Banker, here's an extra $100 a month. Don't pay me any interest on that. If I want it back, I'll borrow it back on your terms and prove there's a need why I should have it. Now, maybe they didn't actually say that, but that's what they're doing every time they make an extra principal payment against their mortgage. Well, then they lack liquidity. There's only one way to get that back, and that's to qualify to borrow it back. When you need it the worst, it's the hardest to get. I had learned that lesson. So in 2008, my home, in 2007, December, I refinanced, and it was worth $1.5 million. And I mortgaged that home for a first mortgage, 80% loan to value, and then a second mortgage, clear up to the $1.5 million. Okay. Now, let me just simplify this. When the 2008 crash happened and my house went down in value from $1.5 million down to $1.1 million, I had critics that said, neener, Mr. Andrew, you're underwater. You owe more on your house than it's worth. Yeah, I owed $1.5 million. The house had been worth $1.5 million. Now it's only worth $1.1 million. But did I care? No, because my money wasn't tied up in the house. See, I had that $1.5 million plus the compound interest on that $1.5 million sitting over in my maximum funded index universal life insurance contracts, earning a rate of return greater than the net cost of the mortgage. I was earning more than triple, 3 times more than the net cost of my first mortgage. But let's take my second mortgage as an example, okay? I was earning at least 9%. Let's just say 8. I'm making 8% compound interest tax free. on that last 400,000 that my house went down in value. That 400,000 that was no longer a part of my house value, I was still making money. On 8% on 400,000 is 32 grand tax-free the very first year. So far, so good. What was the cost of that 400,000 on a second mortgage? Okay. Well, I was borrowing, actually cheaper than this, but let's say I was borrowing at 6% tax deductible interest. That's a net cost of 4, because in a 33% bracket, if I borrow 400,000 at 6%, it's only really costing me a net of 4%. 4% on 400,000 is 16,000 a year. Are you connecting the dots? I'm earning 32,000 the very first year that this is happening. I'm earning 32,000 in my laser funds on that 400,000. The cost of the mortgage is only 16,000 after I get my tax refunds. And so how much more is 32 than 16? 100% more. Would you hire an employee for 16,000 that made you an extra 32,000? I was making 100% more than the net cost of the mortgage. I only have to peel off 50% of what I'm earning on that 400,000 to make the mortgage payment. I'm in control, okay? And sure enough, a few years later, it came back and came up to value. But in the meantime, I didn't lose a dime. Even though my house went down in value of 400,000, I was making 100% rates of return on that 400,000 of equity that was no longer in the property. On the first mortgage, I was borrowing money at more like 4.25%, a net cost of under 2 3/4, and I was making actually 8.5 to 9. I was making 300%, 3 times more than the cost of the first mortgage. So this is the marvel of wealth accumulation. This is safe, positive leverage. This is how money works. Savvy real estate investors understand this. So this is how to not lose money when we have real estate market values plummet. And it's happening soon. Because of COVID-19, what has happened? We had a lot of employees that were forced to work from home. A lot of them, about 50%, actually work as effective or more effective from home. And so most businesses now, they let them stay at home, but the other half have to come in and sort of be babysat. They're not self-motivated. They don't have batteries included unless somebody is watching them and they punch a time clock. And so the result is that commercial real estate is only now about 50, 60, 70% occupied. And so that means that the values are dropping down and commercial real estate is dropping down 30 or 40% in value. These landlords are having to renegotiate the mortgages that are maturing, coming due, and probably about $3 trillion of commercial real estate is going to have to be refinanced here in the next 2 to 3 years from the filming of this episode. And who holds most of the mortgages on commercial real estate? Small regional banks. So what does this mean? They're going to have to be foreclosing on these because the landlords aren't bringing enough rental income to meet the mortgages, and they're going to be hurting. And so the Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank failures are just the beginning of a ripple effect that causes all kinds of related businesses to be into trouble. I'm not a doomsdayer, but this is just a domino effect. I want you to be protected. So most people are taken by surprise when this domino effect takes place and their home values or real estate values go down. Don't lose when that happens. It's not a matter of if, it's when. When that happens, I would implore you to have your real estate equity separated in a position of liquidity, the ability to access it when you need it, safe, so that when the market goes down, you don't lose. And when you have your money in a laser fund, it's safe. It's not in the stock market. You don't lose when the market goes down. Okay, you may not make much of anything, but you don't lose, but you get to participate when the market goes up using a strategy called indexing. And then you want to earn a predictable rate of return that's doubled or tripled the net cost of the mortgage. I don't care if it's just barely enough to cover the mortgage. I want to have liquidity, even if I'm not making 100% more than the cost of the mortgage, but I've always earned at least double or triple the net cost of the mortgage. And so this is why I use Max Funded Index Universal Life as my safe repository to keep my serious cash, because based upon these pillars, liquidity, safety, rate of return, and tax benefits, on a scale of 1 to 10, this scores usually 33 to 35 points out of a possible 40. You know where most Americans' money is? In IRAs or 401ks or in banks or credit unions or mutual funds. This total score is only about 18 to 22. I want you to raise your safety, liquidity, rate of return score and the tax benefits up to 35 out of a possible 40 points. I don't know of any investment that is a perfect 40. There's nothing else that comes close to a properly structured IUL. So use that. This is where I earn 100 to 300% more than the net cost of the funds. And frankly, there have been periods of low interest where I've borrowed money at 3% tax deductible in a 33% tax bracket, a net cost of 2. On every million, I pay $20,000, and I have earned 10% tax-free. On my laser funds, how much more is 10 than 2? That's 500%. I was paying $20,000 in interest and making $100,000. Would you hire an employee for 20 grand that made you an extra 100 grand? I'll do that all day long. That's called a 500% return on employment cost. Would you buy a widget machine for 20 grand that made you an extra 100 grand? That's a 500% return on equipment cost. So this is how money works. I would recommend you study this or you're going to miss out because we have an impending recession. I'm not a doomsdayer, but I am a realist. So to protect yourself and be recession proof, read and study the Laser Fund book. It's 300 pages. It's actually 2 books in one. This side is about 200 pages, 14 chapters with all the charts and graphs and explanations of how to diversify and create the foundation for tax-free accumulation and a tax-free retirement and so forth. If you're more of a right brain learner, you learn more by stories. You flip it over to this one. This is about 100 pages, 12 chapters with 62 actual client stories that will help you understand what I'm talking about. If you want to use your whole brain, read the left brain and the right brain side. Here's how you claim your free copy. Simply go to LaserFund, LASERfund.com, or click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I require a little bit of skin in the game. I'll cover the rest of that cost. I will pay for the book. I'll fire out a hard copy to you via priority mail. Now, while you're in there claiming your free copy, if you like to listen and learn or watch and learn, check out those options. We even have regular educational webinars we teach. They're free, but you can even schedule an appointment with an IUL specialist that I've trained, that I oversee, to actually, with no cost or obligation, be able to see reports of how these strategies may apply in your particular set of circumstances and how a laser fund can be structured correctly to do exactly what I'm talking about. If you go, I've never seen an insurance policy that has been created like that, well then you need to see one done right. So don't miss out. Claim your free copy now, and I hope to see you on the brighter side of your future.